Hey, Brandon.
Happy Thursday.
Hey, folks. Hello.
So Josh, I have to ask, is your name what happens when you put the passcode in your name by accident?
No, I just thought it would be funny because the code is so simple and anyone who's here had to know it.
I like it.
What's up, Brandon? Derek? Josh? Tony James? Oh, the other Mike Brown. Oh, boy.
It makes it easy for me. I just say, Mike Brown, Mike Brown.
Hey, Mike.
Got them both. So I feel like we got a decent quorum here. Rob, I think you might have been the first one asking about the compression parameters. Do we want to start with that?
Sure. Yeah, so this is a problem where we I'll just outline the problem. So we take a container image, it has a bunch of layers in tar.gzip, tar.gz format. You bring it down, you roll them out, and then you want to repack them for whatever reason. And then what happens is, if you don't know what parameters have been used to compress those layers, then going the other way becomes nearly impossible to achieve reproducibility. So I think the question now is, as we have this, so if OCI standards are becoming more prominent and more well known, and you have lots of these tools working, interoperating with each other, then this becomes a concern. So the question is, do we sort of specify or capture these parameters in a standard way so that different implementations can achieve the same output given these parameters? Because the deflate algorithm, if you change a few parameters here and there, will not produce the same output.
If you want to reproduce the same output, you should save the bytes, because in general, like this is impossible unless you have the exact same implementation of gzip with the exact same parameters. I don't think it's a tractable problem to try to solve, really.
Okay.
Like pgzip will do different things than gzip will do different things than the Go gzip library will do different things than Klauspost's gzip implementation. And, you know, it is a very small slice of problem that you solve by including parameters for one specific implementation that doesn't generalize to be like super useful, in my opinion. So I think if you want to be able to recompress something exactly, you need
I
a
have to
lot
use
more
the same tool.
information.
Yeah, so I have to use exactly the same tool in
Same
reality.
implementation, same version
Yeah,
of that tool.
same everything. Yeah, so that ties me to a particular implementation at that point.
I mean, you're already tied to it because the JSON itself, the serialization of that is not necessarily reproducible either. We don't have a standard way of formatting the JSON every single time, whether there's white space in there or not. If fields get reordered, there's no guarantees in there.
Yeah, I think a better solution is not hashing the gzipped form, but instead using checksums of the non-gzipped form. And that's a hard lift to achieve, but I think it's more generally useful than this problem, and also solves this problem.
I think that's getting into my comment in there about transport level compression might be the better way to go on this one. Yeah,
I'm kind of disillusioned with like canonical whatever, canonical JSON, canonical gzip implementations. It means that you don't have interoperability or the ability to like change an implementation ever, which is awful.
So much for standards. Okay, so
it's standard, it's just not reproducible.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to reproduce something, then you would need more information than just gzip stuff, right? Like, you need a lot of information for that, and I think that going in a media type or whatever is wrong, but makes sense in like an SBOM or something like in toto attestation of the provenance of the build that includes all of the inputs, which would also capture your gzip parameters, right?
Yeah, my own reproducible solutions document exactly what builder I used. And so you get your reproducibility just because the builder is the same in each one.
okay, that's all I had actually. We can move on to the next topic.
Okay, I put it up top and we got the whole quorum here for this, or at least some key players in this one. Derek, are you able to jump on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Curious what the status is on the issue we're talking about, registries allowed to reject missing subjects.
Yeah, I'm working on a very compatible version of something that I think will work. So if anyone's interested in kind of chatting about that and stuff, we can do that. That's it.
Yeah, the question I keep hearing is, what's the time frame that we're looking at for this?
Well, let's see. It's been 3.5 months now. But I just started like thinking about what some of the technical solutions are. When did we just start that part of the discussion? A few weeks ago. So I don't know. I'll open a pull request next few weeks, I think, to discuss it. But if we want to have like a working session to go through it, so it's more not just my ideas and then goes back and forth forever, we can do that. No, I will say that, yeah, the challenge there, or at least from my perspective, is, yeah, I think I want to make it clear that any change is not intended to break kind of the existing use cases or anything that's there today. It's more about expanding compatibility, not locking it down or taking away use cases. So.
So before we move on from this, Josh, Mike, Toddy, anybody else that has questions, concerns?
I wouldn't really call it a concern. There was some work going on over on the image spec with respect to artifacts to define what the patterns that would be used. And I think that it sort of ties over to what Derek's been working on in this 459 issue. We might want to look at the image, just a heads up, Derek, might want to look at the image. I'll put a link here. I think I got it. Yeah, where we were talking about the option of having an artifacts index, if possible, that could be pushed under a platform index, thereby giving you a place that you could push these artifacts inside a DAG without changing how they would be stored from a 1.0 perspective. Just a heads up there.
I'd be interested in a working session or some sort of early access demo thing. You know, like it'd be good to get some eyes on it before we spend like a month or two. So if there's any way we can start talking about it earlier than the timeline you were saying, that'd be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, after KubeCon, I took a little bit of a break from this stuff. So it's only like I had some stuff I need to get back to, but yeah, I don't like working on that stuff alone anyway. So yeah, if any folks who are interested, we could, I don't know if we still have the working group, like Slack channel or something. We can talk there as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, me too. I think it'd be nice to make sure we've got a good set of use cases defined, and put them in both the artifacts place in the image spec, as well as make sure any possible must language inside of the distribution specification supports, at least 2 or 3 of those use cases.
I have 2 questions. One is, and this can come out if we have a meeting about it. Are you planning to, in this, modify some of like the major additions, like subject or refers API, or is it just additive?
I mean, my goal is that it's additive. Like I have my main concern, I would say, is it's not necessarily the must language as much as I feel like the underlying problem the must language is solving is related to the fact that registries must generate the index. So I know we talked before about like having some transactional nature, or being able to statically push up that index. So from my perspective, anything there could be additive, but like any registry behavior that's there today or an implementation that's auto-generating the index, I don't think we would try to like pull back on that, because I mean it's a perfectly fine use case. But if going through that exercise we realize there's like some redundancy or something, or maybe some stuff is just not necessary, if we add some things, and we can talk about it. But I think from my perspective, it would just be additive. And that's kind of why I want to make some of that stuff clear. I mean, I certainly have my opinions of like, this thing isn't necessary, but it's like, well, it might not be necessary for one implementation, but it might be necessary for another. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, because I think something's unnecessary, I'm proposing we remove something. But I think everything can be done with additive language.
Okay. My second comment, and like, I hate to keep bringing this type of thing up, but what happens if like we get to this new thing proposed and we still, the sentiment appears to be to move forward with what's current? Are we, this is more of like a process governance thing, like can we ever come to an agreement on what will be in the release?
I mean,
and
I
that's
think
part
so.
of-
We only need 2/3, and you know, we're just like, I think we're almost there. So I think we can figure out, like, yeah, I said, it's just like a single vote flip. So I don't think that there's no way we can work together to come to a consensus. I mean, I don't think that it's not like there's like a use case we're saying like, no, we just cannot support that use case. We're just trying to figure out how to support all the use cases. So I don't think that it's not a concern for me right now that we'll get in that situation. Like, I think we're all mature individuals and we can come to a consensus on stuff.
All right, I hope we can come to that.
Have you guys considered the validation discussion in the larger context? I'm sure Derek's, at least one of those options would have some kind of validation, but I know Stephen was pointing out, I don't see him here, but he was pointing out that he'd like to see a must validate, the subject refers. I don't know what you guys think about that. Should we be adding any kind of language?
Do we
Or
have any
either the-
language like that today that forces a registry to validate?
That it is in the image specification, but in this must language sort of goes against that validation for this new field type in the distribution specification. I believe there already is validation language in the distribution spec for the for the index and the image and the blobs, just not for the art. If the manifest has a subject descriptor,
I think validation's up to the registries. I mean, if there's any confusion in terms of how something might be validated, we can add like clarification language there, or what we talked about, like not necessarily in the actual spec, but in kind of the implementation guide. If it's like unclear, like
that works.
Like for
That
subject, for
works.
example, yeah, if you don't validate the subject on upload, like when do you validate it?
That's what I was thinking. Maybe there could be some should language on the client that if they're supporting both patterns, right, and they identify that, in this particular case, the artifact isn't going to be in a tag and therefore validated by the registry, the client should do the validation for the two registries, for example, that it's pushing to. One for the artifact where it's being stored in SigStore, for example, and the other in a Docker or ICR or some other OCR, kind of registry where they're not going to allow you to store that, right, outside the tag. I'm just saying you'd have to push some should language, I think, to the client to make sure it gets validated when not done by the registry. And Brandon, not trying to bike shed this, just pointing out that at least one maintainer has already, brought up the idea that validation is important.
Yeah, I think from the client perspective there, normally when you walk a DAG, you're auto validating by walking the DAG. But in that case, yeah. I think what you're saying is if you're querying by the subject, then you don't necessarily want to just assume that what the registry gives you is related to that subject. Fine. You should actually look, right?
Yep, you should look. Yep, make sure the SHA that you have, if you already have a copy, that's fine. Make sure it's what was pulled in the refers API.
Are you saying we're worried the registry is going to give bad data back to the refers API of the client? Is that the concern?
Well, Yeah, I mean, it's right now, it's just going to give you a refers index, right? With all the artifacts, whether or not they've been validated in pattern, in the current pattern, must pattern.
What exactly are you validating against? Is this the manifest list that's returned by the refers API? You want to validate that?
Yeah.
I don't see there's a way to validate that.
Yeah, it's a hard one because
needs to have a subject field with the digest that you asked for.
Yeah, so you would have to pull each one of the entries in that refers response and verify each one of those contain contain manifest.
That validates that everything in the refers list actually refers to your subject, but it doesn't necessarily validate that there's nothing else in the registry that refers to your subject.
Correct.
We can have false negatives, but no false positives.
Correct.
Well, that gets into the validation versus like if the registry is not just erring there, but whether you're going to a mirror something and potentially getting untrusted content, then you can't really know from that request, just as you couldn't know today just by getting a tag whether or not the index or the manifest that you get is trusted. I mean, the same thing kind of goes there. I mean, you'd have to go one layer up and now say you have a signed. Now you have to sign the, yeah, which I think is out of scope for refers. And Brandon, you're nodding your head like, yeah, that's you have to trust the response basically.
You have to, and that's the part about it. But over on the image spec, it specifically states that any descriptor, right, with the exception of platform, needs to be validated, all the fields. It doesn't mention the subject, descriptor. So we probably need, John, to modify that descriptor MD for that case for artifacts to include platform or artifact, unless we don't think it needs to be validated. I think it is a descriptor. That's what we picked. If it was a string, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But right now, it's a subject descriptor.
I mean, I think it's worth validating just that from a sanity check, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a looping call. Like it doesn't give you any sort of like back guarantee that what the registry gave you has any sort of like correctness, if that makes sense.
It does, but I could make the argument that if I only had support for 2 registries and I wanted to have trust in both of those registries, then knowing that it's been validated, right, the content that I received from both registries is validated at the client space, then I can go ahead and run it and use that artifact, with at least some basic understanding that at least I'm using 2 registries that I trust, right? But if I don't check it there, it goes into a cache and somebody else could pull an artifact from another place. See what I'm saying? It's like, where did the refers come from? We're lacking some should validate language, I think, that would help out those kinds of scenarios. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit in the work group.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to push us to using the term working session instead of working group, just because working group has a connotation OCI.
Sorry.
Is the next topic about your template for working groups? That'd be a good segue.
That might be a good reason to say that. Yeah. The working group, we didn't have a template before, and that caused some delays from, I don't want to say delays, but just Amy was having a challenge trying to figure out, how do I set up this new working group repo for everything? And so I offered her, she gave us a blank one. I would fill it out with some of the common stuff we were using back when we did the refers working group. So mostly just an FYI, this is out there, and big thanks to Sam for going through and finding all my typos everywhere and confusing phrasing. The one file that did not get copy and pasted from something out of the OCI repo had all the issues. So gave me a PR that I need to put back on one of my own repos, fix some of this stuff. But if anybody sees something I missed, feel free, chime in. This isn't set in stone either. This is another repo out there. We can always update as time goes on. Any questions, concerns, or folks scrolling through too much verbiage on that one? Going once, going twice. Let's jump into some of these others. We've had a backlog, and so I just kind of pulled them into the backlog, pulled them out of the backlog, I guess.
Can I jump the queue a little bit? Because I have a really, really short one that I added to the bottom.
Yeah, is that the FreeBSD? I wasn't sure who
Yeah.
had that. Go ahead.
I added that. So a couple of us are proposing a new FreeBSD working group, and just wanted to raise awareness of that. And if anyone's interested in, participating, there's an issue for that. Hopefully we can get a little bit of interest, and then I'll call for a vote on that at the TOB. Anyway, that's it.
One of the few working groups I'll be able to avoid just because I don't run FreeBSD, but cool seeing other people that are running it. All right, we want to chat about the OCI chunk min length header that folks are proposing. Actually not proposing, just fixing. I think that's a quick and easy one. If anyone's looked at that, the documentation on how the header comes back was that we were saying it was supposed to be on, I don't think we specified, and so we were updating this to say it needs to be on the post request. Or we had said in the put request, and it's supposed to be in the put request. It's supposed to be in the post request. So just a clarification of which of the APIs that header is supposed to be on. And as the one that originally put the first PR in there that probably had all the stuff miswritten in there, this PR looks correct to me. So it just needs a second approval on that one. Thanks, Josh. All right, next one on the list here. And I'm just moving on just because Josh had already hit approve on that one. So I think we got our two. Allowed characters in the image name. Folks have been asking about this for a while back. And I chimed in that said I didn't think it was all that great of an idea, but I wanted to make sure before I hit the unilateral close on this that people didn't think it was a good idea to make the repo name case insensitive, or sorry, allow uppercase characters with case sensitivity in there. Are there folks that think it's a good idea to change that regex? And should I be sharing a screen to make it easier on folks?
Oh, I'm just trying to read it to understand.
Yeah. I think they have image names and they want to be able to put uppercase characters in the image names.
Do registries allow that today?
They don't. This is trying to make a change to the spec to push that on all the registries.
Josh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems bad.
All right. I just wanted to make sure before I went in there and unilaterally said, one moderator said, no, I wanted to get some feedback from others. So I'm seeing no's from other people. I'm assuming that's no's of don't want it, but I think there's also the no to Derek's question there.
In a different world, yes. I don't think we'll ever achieve this, even if we say yes.
Yeah. I can only see problems caused by this rather than fixes. All right.
I mean, it's similar to the request to add the plus sign to things where it's like we want to, but go back through and make sure every registry handles that correctly and not like a space is a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about tag pagination? 470. We had a request to define a default limit. Mike, I think you had chimed in with a few comments on there. One of them was, where did I come up with the n equals 100? And I just made it up. No rhyme or reason to it. I just picked 100, figured that was a nice round number. I'm flexible to change that number. I saw a comment that Crane picks n equals 1,000. And I thought that number was good enough for Quay, but Quay is all the way down at 50. Do we want to pick a number? And if so, what number do we want to pick?
The language that used to be in the spec before it was unceremoniously deleted was very good, and I advocate for that. And many registries still don't abide by that. But ideally, like, the registry controls the default tag size and the limit of the tag size. But
I think it's like the plus character where registries have already implemented this and now it's hard to undo it after the fact.
well, I thought we had a good scheme, and then at some point, which may not be true anymore, ECR returned an error if you ask for too large of a page, which is not great. Like, ideally, they would clamp to the maximum they want to support and return that.
Clamping to the maximum is not good unless we had already defined the link header. But without
We
defining
had.
the link header,
We did.
yeah. Yeah, but
It just
without that in
didn't-
the spec, the only way clients know how big it is when they
is
see
in the
less than
spec.
the full set.
It's in the Git history. Everyone implemented it this way. I don't care about the language lawyers. I don't care. It's implemented this way on all clients. Registries should have implemented this way because it was in the spec. And I don't care. I don't care. We should put it back because it was there. That's all I have to say.
John, just to clarify, the behavior being that n is not provided and the registry will just return a link once it hits its limit?
Yeah.
If it hits a limit? Okay.
Yeah. So what we got, years ago was that as long as clients follow links, then registries have a lot of leeway to do what they want to support. And that made it into a spec version at some point, but is not in the current spec version. And I think we should put it back because that's what clients tend to support. And that's what registries have expected people to do. So I vote that.
As someone that tried writing a client following the spec, I did not do that until I found out the hard way.
Yep. It's the correct thing.
So just to fully understand what it says n is optional, and it's saying the case where you explicitly say n equals 0, then you must return an empty list. But and not
That's a weird
provided.
one.
That was always there. I don't think I added that.
Okay, I was just trying to
Who put
cover
that?
the.
Yeah, yeah. That was a weird
don't need
scenario.
Okay, because that was just confusing because in what case would you explicitly look for a 0 value there, but
Why do we
versus
have
not
that?
provided?
Take no responsibility. That was not me.
But I can
have-
see how that might cause some confusion because users would consider n equals 0 as kind of similar to a not provided value often.
Unlimited, right?
Well, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Any-
There's -1 is usually right, but I don't know if it's
Yeah.
signed.
But yeah,
What
if
is
you
the
say
utility?
Yeah, the only stuff I was doing was being explicit about saying there can be a link header, but when clients give you a number, I think I was being explicit that you need to give it at least or exactly that number. And if you give less, then you're at the end of the list. And if you can't give that full size, then you need to error out for clients. Because right now, not erroring out is the problem.
But are there registries today that if you do not provide the limit and it has more than some unspecified limit, it will return that limit exceeded?
It It doesn't today, and that's the problem, is that it just silently caps the length. And so clients interpret the silently capped length as I've reached the end of the list, because that's the way the
That's
spec is
wrong.
written.
That's wrong.
Yeah, it seems like we should have language in there to specify if a link is provided that there's more. Like if that's what clients are doing today, like
How do we add that retroactively? That's the problem.
Well, you open a pull request and then we merge it. I don't think it matters that we made a mistake, because the reality is more important than theoretical correctness. We can publish some errata if we'd like, but it is dumb to look at the spec and say, "Oh, we're not allowed to do the correct and obvious thing because we made a mistake." I don't think that is a useful human behavior to engage in. I think it is more useful to correct the mistake immediately so as not to let it proliferate any longer, so that all of the registries that did implement the previous behavior that was in the specification don't have to change to do very strange things like return an empty list with no link header if you specify n equals 0. Why did that get added, but the useful information got removed? Why? I'm bad at my job, apparently, because I didn't notice. Create a new spec that is John's distribution spec that is correct, and I don't care about backwards incompatibility. I care about reality.
maybe it'd be interesting to go back and see. I'm sure there was a very specific and weird reason why that was added, and it's probably not relevant to most.
Yeah, I'm gonna go find it.
Most of the
I need
world.
to know.
It was likely a Docker bug from like 2014 or something.
I am slightly concerned about making breaking changes, but if John is the one that introduces a breaking change, I will not be the one that puts my hand against it.
It's tag listing anyway. It's always been a weird one.
That's why I won't be the one that objects, but I don't want to put my name on it because someone is going to come back and yell at someone in the future.
I'll put my name on it.
Here's the pull request. There are about 10 issues that it resolves. Maybe we can find out why.
I see Josh put his name on that one.
Yeah, I can't confirm or deny that I had any involvement with this.
Aha!
You've got
I
a
may
green
or may
check.
not have employed the person who
The
authored
utility
this.
is to check if a repo name is present.
So it's just a fast way to find out with like a blank query, because you can't query a manifest existence because the manifest won't exist.
Derek says, no link header. Cool.
Yeah, that'd be kind of a weird case, right?
Yeah, that would be strange. So, okay, so here's this comment of yours indicates to me that the link header was there at the time you made this comment, right? So where did it go? Why is it gone? If we added this line to be consistent with a concept that no longer exists, then I'm upset. Where did it go?
I will allow you to push that PR, and I will not object when other people approve it.
All right, I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes doing that. Bye.
You'll find it. I remember pagination moved, where it was described moved from. It was a reorganization of the spec. There were too many instances of pagination description, I think.
So they tried to go from n equals 5 to n equals 1, but you end up going to n equals 0 by accident. Is that what you're saying? All right. While John is spending the next 15 minutes writing a new PR that I'm going to cover my eyes and ears and pretend that I had no involvement in. How about the pushing chunks with a max chunk size hint? I think we've got a minimum length, but we don't have a maximum length. And people are asking for that. This is 485. This one, bit of discussion. In fact, is this the long discussion? This went back and forth a whole bunch of times, and yeah, it is. We've got several ways to push blobs to a registry, and OCI has defined 3, of which only 2 are really used, which is that you can push it with a monolithic blob push, or you can do a chunked blob push with individual chunks. There is another method that's used by Docker and probably other people following Docker. I should say Moby at this point, which is a streaming blob upload where it starts to push a patch, but it doesn't define the size of the patch, and it just ships the full patch to the end. And then after it's all done shipping that byte stream, then it figures out what the digest is, and then it does the finalization on it. And this one is trying to define the chunk max length for just the one chunked blob upload and none of the others. And I'm having a hard time seeing the value of that. So because of that, there was a whole bunch of back and forth. I think one of the big concerns is that this is proposing to change the Docker behavior on the streaming upload to turn it into a chunked upload. And I know the chunked upload is the one that I had the most challenge with getting support from registries.
Specifically breaking it up into multiple requests, multiple patch requests,
Yeah,
rather than
this
one
is
streaming patch.
This is effectively saying that they're going to change the behavior of the Docker engine to make all uploads a chunked upload whenever they talk to any registry that has that header that gets pushed back at them. And in a way, they say that it's not a problem because it's only registries that respond with that header. The challenge I have is that they're indicating this is because they want to have proxies in there, and the proxy you encounter may not be a proxy that's controlled by the registry you ultimately talk to.
Who sets the header then in that case? Like, where's it getting proxied?
If you hit a proxy, whatever the reverse or forward proxy you talk to might throw the header in there because the proxy itself doesn't want to maintain this full chunk internal. So they want to reduce their overhead on the proxy side.
This is a hard one to comment on without actually looking at a HTTP interaction. I feel like.
Yeah, I get the feeling it was going to happen in their scenario is that you do the initial post and the post request says, hey, don't send me any blobs bigger than X. And then it's up to the client if they're getting ready to do a streaming upload to reduce their stream size to be capped at that size and then follow along with chunked uploads. If you're doing a chunked upload, you would reduce your maximum chunk size to whatever that limit is. It doesn't do anything for the post put, the monolithic upload, or the single post method that's out there, which nobody really uses anyway.
Does this monolithic upload have the same problem though? If they,
That was my question to him, and it didn't seem like they were too concerned about that for some reason.
is that just because in practice, the clients they're talking to don't do it?
Maybe their clients don't, but I feel like if we define this, other people trying to use this might encounter clients that do that and would get upset when it's not honored. Because I feel like monolithic is a pretty significant amount of blob uploads to registries.
I try to remember what we do in Containerd, but I thought we only do monolithic if it's under a certain size or for specific type of objects.
Yeah, Containerd does chunked transfer encoding most of the time in my experience, and Docker always does the post patch put monolithic patch, I think.
Containerd does chunk though by default.
Oh, I don't know anymore. And
Yeah.
Containerd does like 2 requests and Docker does 3 requests, right?
If it's doing 2, then that's a monolithic, which that's what a lot of them are. That's what most people tend to do if they don't want to do a whole chunked upload. The streaming upload that Docker does is 3 requests. A chunked upload is however many requests you have. It's multiple patches.
You say chunked.
Multiple patch request.
I don't know many clients that will do that, if any.
And the thing that gets me nervous is this is proposing that they want to change Docker's default behavior from 1 patch to multiple patches. Whenever
Yeah,
it sees that header.
I think the idea behind the patch, the first place was more around resumable upload rather than trying to break stuff up into smaller patches. Because yeah, I don't see the point of like adding more requests.
I feel like when I look at what Docker does, the biggest value to me of the streaming patch, where it's just a single patch in there, is that you don't know the digest of the content until you're done. And if I do a post put, I need to know that digest on that put at the beginning of the request.
That's definitely why Docker has it broken out that way.
Yeah, because they're building that tar file on the fly, and they can just calculate the digest as it goes and never have to store any of that in memory.
Which loops back to the original topic we had around non-predictable digest. But yeah, I think in practice it shouldn't. I mean, even as Docker's implementing, or Moby, I should say, moving to the Containerd world. I mean, I don't think there's any case where we'll change that other than if we want to support the resumable upload. And I think we've had a to-do in Containerd for a long time about doing that, but today we don't.
Yeah, I got the impression they're trying to use this as leverage to then change distributions implementation, then use that to change Docker's implementation. They're trying to
Yeah, I don't think
the
that
spec first.
Yeah, I don't think Docker or Moby is going to change this implementation because it's already moving to Containerd's implementation. And BuildKit already uses Containerd's implementation, so it's kind of pointless if that's the end objective.
So this kind of leads into the other issue out there that I've got, which is talking about the whole streaming upload that Docker has. Would we like to standardize that? Because that is not part of distribution spec. Goes
You
into
mean the patch approach, patch stream?
the single patch without a content length in it. And that's pull request 404 kind of gets into that, but I don't think they did a complete PR on this. There's details missing, I suspect. But there is a link to the distribution repo of how they define the stream upload. That had a few more details in that, where they define the full API. What fields are there and what aren't. But it's a single patch. There is no start and end. There is no content length. It's just, I'm doing a patch, here's a bunch of data. And we don't have that defined in our spec, but that's what Docker uses. It's what was defined in distribution back in the day. Feels like it might be good to define that in distribution spec at some point.
Is there any deviation there or special logic that's not just covered by HTTP spec around that?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the HTTP patch details to see if they define that you need a content length or anything like that in theirs.
I mean, we could call it out in the spec as two different ways of doing the patch if it's causing some confusion, like a streaming patch versus a chunked upload, or the chunked upload as it's defined, I guess.
To me, it gets attention just because we define the chunked patch in so much detail, and there's no test, no verification on registries, no conformance that they support the streaming patch. And I feel like that might be a good thing for us to define and standardize and test.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely makes sense, especially if every registry is supporting that today.
Every registry supports Docker, which I feel like is a lot of them.
Was the reason for the max to begin discussions on doing parallel patch pushing, right, on two HTTP streams at the same time?
Their reason for requesting the max was because they had a proxy in the middle that was holding the entire chunk until it pushed it up. Yeah, it would hold it before it did the next request going upstream. And so for them to hold that in memory, they wanted to limit the amount of size that would use. I think it's a standard Nginx parameter they would set.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm thinking if you're going to split this in chunks, was there a discussion then about using, two streams for one blob chunked? No? Okay.
No, I believe they wanted to push it one after another serial like it always is, but they wanted a way from the proxy to be able to interrupt a normal upload and convert it into a chunked upload.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how this is different than any other kind of chunked encoding transfer. Like any proxy would run into this going in either direction, I would think.
I think they do. They're hoping that this would be something that, at least for this one client that does very large uploads, they could control it in a way they can't control other things. That's a bunch of them. Anything else on that? Otherwise, I'm looking at our list here. The OCI refers header. We have Mike here. This might be a good one to jump on real quick before we run out of time today. 463. I might be scratching some old memories here, Mike, but you chimed in on this one a while back, where I was defining the refers absent header, and you wanted a refers present header to go along with it.
Link. You say 460 what?
463. Yeah, no
I was looking
worries. I'll drop in the notes, or it's in the notes. I'll drop it in our chat. Yeah, the spec itself, we're defining that it may have a refers absent header, and if clients see that, they would know they don't need to even bother trying to run a refers API on this manifest. There was a parallel thought process to add a link header when they do exist. So it wouldn't just be it's present, it would be a refers do exist, and oh, by the way, go talk to the CDN directly to get these. Don't even bother talking to the registry. Here's the URL to get it from there. So we never defined a refers present header. And part of the reason we didn't define the refers present is because for a client that is querying refers, the behavior is identical whether there would be a refers present header versus if there was no header at all. Because the client just doesn't know if the registry doesn't support it or if it exists. So it's going to query it in both cases.
Yeah, I think I was just pointing that you could go into more detail here, right? Reading my text explaining that the manifest being referred does not change when being referenced. Thus, the tag, for example, does not change at all, thus providing no indication that a new refer is available. There was more context to the link.
Not sure I follow.
Well, if we know they don't have a reference, we also know whether they do, right?
So
you could
the registry could do
they
that,
do or
but,
not. Yeah.
But the value of that to the client isn't there, because for a client, if it doesn't see the header and if it sees the header, it says they're there, the client behavior is identical.
Is that a must be identical?
Well, if you query a registry,
I didn't see it that way when I was reading it, right? That's all I'm saying.
If I'm a client and I need refers, if I need to check if this thing is signed and I'm going to go query to see if there's signatures out there, and I don't see that header, I will query for that refers API. Just because I don't know if this is a registry that did not implement this thing or if they exist. The difference between the two doesn't make a difference to me. I'm going to query that API no matter what, either way.
And also, I guess in my head, I was thinking, now I'm starting. It's coming back into my cache. I was thinking there's a point in time element to this, right? As well.
That's always there.
Right, but we don't explain at what point in time it was valid or not.
It's for this one, for this say refers as absent, it's the point in time that you query. Thanks, Toddy.
Which implies a validation. That's why. Never mind.
It's when the manifest was queried, and if you can't be current with whatever that header is, then I would say just don't even give the header and let the clients query the refers after the fact. This was kind of feedback to the clients so that they would know. But we're hitting the clock. I see a bunch of people having to drop.
Well,
so,
yeah, we'll transfer that conversation to the work group session. Yeah. Sorry.
That one and working session, if we can get it this week, that would be good.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you.